Hey, this is a demo for a private customer who's got two sabers. The first one is this Rancor claw. This was made by Jawa's Junkyard, and it is installed with the CFX. They both are, right? This is a one-button setup. We'll go over this one last just because I've got the other one right here. And then the other one is this guy right here. Very long Sith staff, like a Knights of the Old Republic Sith staff. This came to me about a year ago, and I did the etching. Put the Sith code on here with these, all the etching I did. And then I sent this off to Red Fox Drummer to get powder coated, and then a customer had it for a while, waiting for me to have availability, and then also waiting for me to move. So I really appreciate your patience, and then sent this to me. It's been almost a year, and then finally got this done. He wanted this to be installed with a single CFX, so a two-button setup that controlled both sides, right? Because there's a blade on both sides. You've got CC sabers in here for your lit PCB, and then it also, same thing in here, right? And then we've got an aluminum dual tactile switch right here from TJ Wells over at Ignition Saber Company that I used. So your top switch will be your activation, and your bottom will be your auxiliary over here. And then your sound venting comes through this middle coupler right here. You can see all the holes. In order to get this to work, because it's so long, I had to print the longest chassis that I've ever had to do. It was just under 9 inches, right? And it basically goes into the side that has the switch. That's how you remember that. But we just want to unscrew it here in the middle. Whichever side the coupler decides to come off with, it really doesn't matter, right? So we'll unscrew this. Almost there. Feel it coming in, and we'll just pull this off. This is the side that does not have the switch. And you can see right in there is a Smuggler's Outpost switch pixel PCB set. So I'm a member of Smuggler, so I always use the products. And this is this is the same thing that I use every time I make a chassis that is detachable. What that's sitting in is another piece that you don't hardly see, but it's about 8.5 inches long. So this was two firsts for me having to go this far on my printer, but it worked fine. That chassis goes from about right here all the way, to right here, or to right here rather, and it doesn't come out, and it holds that 14-pin PCB right there. All right, so we'll put that off to the side. Now, when you take this piece off that has a switch on it, you can see the switch right here. You'll see your chassis, and you can just pull it out, pull it all the way out. And you've got another one of those 14-pin PCBs all the way up in there, and that doesn't come out either. But here is your chassis. Super long guy, removable battery. So I hid all the wires underneath there, so nice and clean. Removable battery, spring side over here for your negative. You got a 24mm Smuggler's Outpost speaker, and then you've got your CFX board. Now the CFX is just a press fit in there, and you don't have to move it to get to your SD card. So you can pop your SD card in and out with your finger just like that, and it's all good, right? Now I put these symbols over here. These two symbols might be hard to see on camera, but I've showed you some pictures just to match the symbols that have been etched onto the saber. And then there's a small Smuggler's Outpost emblem that I like to do right here. But if you turn this over, what you've got here is the Sith code. So I put the Sith code on this chassis in Sith text, so I hope you like that. But we've got a Smuggler's Outpost PCB over here, and we've got another one over here. So this is the heart of the saber, basically, right? So we'll put a battery in this guy. Hear it fire up, that's good. Now what you want to remember is even though it can work both ways, you're not going to get sound if you don't do it right? Because this speaker lines up with your coupler. So you want to make sure you take the side that's got the switches, and you put your board end in first, right? So we'll just slide that right in. You can slide it in any way you want. Just make sure your CFX side goes in first. Push that all the way in. You can see how that speaker is sticking out right there, because when we screw all this in, it lines up with your coupler, and that's where you got your sound venting, right? So we're going ahead and push this in there carefully, and then just screw this back together. Now when we screw this together, it locks all the pins in place. The 14 pins over here, the 14 pins over here, the chassis. It just sandwiches everything together. And get it nice and tight. I'll turn off this light. So one tap of the activation over here lights up both sides. So you got that side lit up and that side lit up. And they're running in unison, or they're all wired together. So whatever one side does, the other side will do. That's a pretty good shot where you can see them both. Now if I hold down for auxiliary, you'll see this emitter over here and this one both, or I'm sorry, if I hold down for blade lockup, rather, you'll see them both go off. Until I pull away from it. Good flash on it and clash. If I wanted to change blade color, what you can do is hold down aux and twist the wrist, and twist your wrist. You'll hear this sound.
Spectrum.
Spectrum. And now you can twist the saber to change it to any color you want, and of course both sides will be the same, right? So if we wanted that blue, we'll find one with hit power. You hear that noise. Now both sides are blue. This thing is a beast. I mean, I'm having a hard time putting it on camera, but if I hold it like that, you can see, I mean, this thing is massive. But both sides are firing up like they should. And we'll put a blade on both sides. Now, for your retention screw real quick, I did not mess with this. But this, I didn't have one handy, but this is what I would do if I were you for a blade retention. You have each side, you have 3 of these bolts, or screws. You got 1, 2, 3, one on every fin, right? But on the inside, the holes for these screws go all the way through into the emitter. So I would just pick one, take it out, and replace it with a slightly longer one. And you can use that for blade retention. I didn't do that. I didn't have any handy, but that's what I would do if I were you. And that's a nice way to have a blade retention screw and not have to drill anything extra, because that's something I did not want to do. After this has been etched and powder coated, drilling into it is never a good idea. All right, so that's what I would do for your blade retention. But for now, I'll just take a blade and I'll just kind of hold it in, and I'll fire up. I'll fire it up twice so you can see each side is doing what it's supposed to do. Find the side that's got the switches right here. So first we got this side. Right. So that side is working, and we'll take it out. We'll flip it over this side. We'll turn this one on. Just like that. So everything on this guy is working like it should. I was very happy at the way it came out. It was a little difficult to make sure everything was the correct length, so that when this thing is screwed together, everything gets sandwiched together, but it's working really well. All right, so we'll go ahead, we'll break it back down. You want to be careful when you're unscrewing it, because there is a piece of the chassis that is past halfway, right? So when you're unscrewing it, you just want to make sure that you pull this guy straight out and don't snap it like that, because you'll break the chassis. And once we got that out, we can come over here and we can just pull your chassis out like that. And from the positive side, which is over here by your speaker, you should be able to come in with your finger and pull it out just like that, right? It's that easy. So that's basically your staff. Hopefully that came out the way you liked. I'm going to put this together real quick. I'm just realizing now, after putting this together, that I don't have a box this long. So Monday I'll have to go get a box this long so I could send both of your sabers. But anyway, there's that one. And we'll put this off to the side. And we'll talk about this Rancor tooth, or this Rancor saber, right? So it is a 1-button setup. It's this guy right here. This does everything. So your CFX is set up for 1 button. You've got stock V3s in here for your lit PCB. And then how you get to everything is you want to take this bottom screw out. Do not mess with this guy. Only this guy right here, right? This is what loosens the claw. So we'll take this all the way out. And I want to talk about some challenges I ran into trying to install this, right? But once you get that out, just pull this tooth completely out. It's just made out of resin, comes right out. We'll set it off to the side. You'll see your speaker there. What you want to do is kind of grab this guy like this, cup your hand, and then hit it on your hand a few times. Like that. When there's not a battery in, it comes out pretty easy, right? So you just pull it right out, and here's your chassis. Now again, you've got one of those 14-pin PCB systems in there that I like to use from Smuggler's Outpost. But we'll put this off to the side for a second. And then here is your chassis. I just got some lightning on there from a previous one that I had done like this. I had the chassis already designed, so that's what I used, and I thought it looked kind of cool. And then you got some lightning over here as well. That female PCB. You've got a removable battery setup right here, right? So spring side over here, although I did cut some of the spring off because it's a tight fit. And then your CFX board is here. And again, you can come over here without ever moving the board, and you can pop your SD card in and out just like that. So easy access. Now, the main thing that I ran into with this guy, and it was consistent with the last one that I did as well, is that the inner diameter of this tube is not consistent. There are slight variations. If you put your finger in there and move around, you can feel them, right? They're not enough to really sand, but they're in there. And it can be troublesome when modeling up a removable chassis because you really want that inner diameter to be all consistent. That way it slides in there nice and it pops out nice. But there were some things inside this handle that I had to get around, and it took a lot of just work on the chassis after it was printed, sanding and finishing it. I've got a certain way that I finish these so they don't look like they're sanded. It's a little something that I do to my chassis if I have to sand them. So it looks nice and smooth. It's a little hard to see on camera, but it's a really nice finishing job. You can never tell that I sanded this guy, but I sanded it for quite a bit. You got a 28mm Smuggler's Outpost Elite speaker, and we'll throw a battery in. Now this one also, there's some things to watch out for. When putting the battery in this guy, you want to use the battery that I'm going to send with no sticker. If you try to use a battery with a sticker, it's going to be too tight. All right. And then there's also a metal strip going from one end of the battery to the other. You can almost see it right there. You don't want that inside the chassis. You want it off to the side, and I'll show you what I mean. Pop that in there. I got that strip riding right here along the edge. And that's exactly where you want it. Not out here and not in the chassis. Just put it right along the edge right there. All right. Every little bit of room counts when trying to get over those few humps that are in this inner diameter. When you get this, the battery in, it might hold up on you right here. You're just going to have to push up on the battery just a little bit, and then it'll go in. Slide past that little piece, right? And we're going to put this in. You take your claw, line it up, and put it in. There's a little spacer that I put in here. You can kind of see it. It's in there nice and tight. It's never meant to come out. That helps you push the chassis forward. So we're going to take this claw, we'll line it up with the hole, the screw hole. You can hear everything clip down, and now we'll tighten the screw in. Now the screw's tightened in, and we can come over here and we can hit activation. You have several sound venting holes all throughout here, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You got 10 sound venting holes here. And the saber sounds pretty decent, right? If you ever wanted to, you could go in pretty easily with a drill or something and widen those out, and it would make the saber sound better. But if it's not something that bothers you, the saber sounds fine now, right? But tap it for blaster bolt deflex. See your LEDs firing up, and now to get blade lock up on a 1-button setup, you have to hold the button down and hit the saber at the same time, like that. So you let go of it. Now we'll go ahead and we will throw a blade in here. To turn it off, you just hold down the button, right? And we'll go over your blade retention. There's There's 2 set screws here. One of them you do not want to mess with. So this guy down here you don't want to mess with. That's holding my little chassis piece in here that holds that 14-pin PCB, and then your NeoPixel holder. It's clocked where just exactly where it needs to be. So don't mess with that guy. This right here is your blade retention. We'll tighten that down. Again, 1 button setup, but you can still hold the button and twist your wrist. Spectrum. You hear spectrum, and you can twist the saber through different colors. So if we wanted this red, and we hit the button, when we turn this back on, we have a red blade. And on each of these, I did give you some different blade effects. So hold down the button and twist your wrist again, but this time keep the button held down. Spectrum. Keep holding it. Blade profiles. Blade profiles. Now again, you can twist the saber, and every time it clicks, it's going through a different blade effect. So if we like that unstable one right there, we'll hit power. And it also has a trace, and it's going to have a trace when the saber ignites, and it'll be a red unstable blade. One more time. Let your blade lock up. That trace is cool, so we're going to do it again, right? So, like that. Now to change sound fonts, just hold down the button until you hear this.
Sound bank selection.
And let go. And then you just cycle through.
Crystal focus. Crystal focus.
Nebula. Nebula.
When you find one you like, hold the button down. Blade lock up. Just like that. And we'll go ahead and we'll take the blade out of this one too. And we'll take this claw off and go over taking the chassis out. Taking the chassis out with the battery in it requires a little bit of oomph, right? So we're going to do the same thing we did to take the chassis out in the beginning. We'll hold it here. We're going to hit it against our hand. But we're going to want to give it a little bit more force because that battery is pretty tight. 3 times it came out enough for me to go ahead and grab it and pull it just like that. And then from the positive side of the battery over here by your speaker, you can pop it out with your finger again, just like that. So that is basically your claw and your staff. Let me know if you got any questions. If not, I will definitely have a tracking number for you by Monday. I just need to go find a box that's big enough for the staff. All right, thanks.